I found my peace of mind and happiness after a 30-day life experiment, and here are 6 of the most important lessons I learned. After this period, I found that I now think more clearly, I'm able to better achieve my difficult goals, I'm in good physical shape, I found contentment and happiness, I also learned to manage difficult emotions, and last but not least, I'm now able to find gratitude even in the darkest of times. This entire 1-month experiment was inspired by the teachings inside this book, Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday. Now let's get into it, starting with lesson 1, how to think more clearly. Napoleon made it his habit to delay responding to the mail. His secretary was instructed to wait 3 weeks before opening any correspondence. When he finally did hear what was in a letter, Napoleon loved to note how many supposedly important issues had simply resolved themselves. He had to be selective about who and what kind of information got access to his brain. That's the key here, being selective. This is one of the most important takeaways that I applied to my life. Previously, every morning I'd check Google News, after that I'd check my email, then because I'm a content creator, I check my analytics, my comments, my Facebook groups, and all that fluff. I ended up doing this multiple times a day. I didn't realize it before I read this book, but I felt overwhelmed with all this info, and at the end of the day, I didn't really remember very much. So I decided to replace all of that, the news, my email, my social media, with reading just 1 book a week. Now, instead of checking all of this stuff, I'm thinking more deeply about 1 book at any one time. I noticed that after doing this, nothing even remotely bad happened to me from not checking social media and so on. And instead of drowning in random info from random places, I actually remember key points from each book I read. Now I turn the question to you. What inputs or info can you cut from your life? If you were to slow down and be more still, what truly meaningful hobby or life work could you dedicate yourself to instead? I found my peace of mind in slowly reading each and every word in the books I pick up. I truly enjoy that process, and that is my stillness. Ultimately, it's up to you to discover what exactly gives you stillness and peace of mind. For me, it's reading, but for you, it may be something else. And that is lesson number 1, limit your inputs and slow down. Now, we move on to lesson 2, how to achieve difficult goals. The great archery master, Awa Kenzo, spent almost no time instructing his students on how to deliberately aim and shoot. Even after a bullseye, he just told them to go on practicing as if nothing happened. Kenzo wanted students to put the thought of hitting the target out of their minds. He wanted them to detach even from the idea of an outcome. Now, this is what I think Ryan and Kenzo are saying. Just last year, I was extremely outcome focused. I would waste a ton of energy checking analytics, wondering why my latest video didn't do well. I would be super disappointed and even got headaches and sleepless nights. And because each of us have a limited amount of energy each day, I could dedicate only the leftover scraps of energy to creating good content. But after reading this book, I realized that I needed to give up chasing my goals and instead embrace the process. So I stopped tracking my analytics and started creating good content for the love of it. And guess what? This year, I hit my modest revenue target. I wasn't expecting it to happen until next year or something, but it did. That is the art of detachment and letting go. If you focus on outcomes, you're operating from a place of emptiness. On the other hand, if you find joy in the process and not the destination, you're operating from a place of abundance, stillness, and peace of mind. And that is how we achieve difficult goals surprisingly without trying too hard, and that is lesson 2. The first 2 points we've gone through touches on what Ryan calls the mind. Now, this book is split into 2 other parts, the body and the spirit. Lesson 3 touches on the body. It teaches us how to achieve physical excellence through stillness. Fred Rogers woke up at 5 a.m. to spend a quiet hour. Then he would head to the Pittsburgh Athletic Club where he would swim his morning laps. When he got to the set of his television show, the theme song starts. The yellow light flashes, the camera pans to the front door. Mr. Rogers enters, singing, and walks down the stairs. At the end of each show, he had an afternoon nap, dinner with his family, and a 9:30 bedtime. He takes time to sit in silence, to exercise, to work, to spend time with family, and to sleep and rest. Before reading this book, I used to sometimes work the entire day, skipping meals, exercise, and reading. But at the end of the day, I honestly just felt really drained, and I even started getting gastric pains. Now, instead, here's what I do. Each day, I would wake up at around 9 a.m. and do a quick morning workout. After that, I'd eat breakfast whilst chilling before starting work at 10. I'd usually do deep work until about 4, have a small little meal, and go for a walk in nature. After that, I'd work for another hour before taking some time off to read, eat dinner, to relax with family and loved ones, and finally wind down for bed at around 12 midnight. I do everything in moderation. Sleep, but not too much. Exercise, but not too much. Work, but not too much. I also don't have to think about things like, should I exercise and read today? All those activities are already baked into my routine, so I don't waste time thinking about it, I just do it. And that is lesson 3. Ryan goes through quite a few chapters under the body, but I can summarize most of them down into just one sentence. Build a healthy routine and everything in moderation. That's it. That is enough to give you stillness of the body. Next, we move on to lesson 4, and here's where we get into spiritual stillness. John Stuart Mill was a philosopher and boy genius. One day, at around 20 years old, Mill decided to ask himself, suppose that all your objects in life were realized. Would this be a great joy and happiness to you? And his subconscious distinctly answered, no. What ensued was a devastating mental breakdown that required years of recovery. Ryan highlights this, and I quote, accomplishments will ultimately fail to provide the relief and happiness we tell ourselves they will. He also says, there is no stillness for the person who cannot appreciate things as they are, particularly when that person has objectively done so much. Over the past 30 days, I spent a lot of time thinking about what might be objectively enough for me to find my peace of mind. So I came up with these questions for myself, and I hope it might be helpful for you too. First, do you make at least $75,000 to $100,000 a year? Lots of research have pointed out that satisfaction doesn't increase past this amount. Second, do you enjoy your job or work at least 80% of the time? Third, do you love and feel loved at least 80% of the time? And fourth, are you intentional and happy with how you spend at least 80% of your time? I chose 80% because life isn't perfect and there will always be moments that we don't like. And that's life, that's perfectly normal. For me, I don't earn anywhere close to this amount, though I do love my work and my relationships, but I do wish I worked a little bit less than I do now. But by and large, looking at this, I think I have it pretty good, and for the most part, I do have enough. As Ryan says, enough comes from the inside, from seeing what you already have, what you've always had. If a person can do that, they are richer than any billionaire, more powerful than any sovereign, and that is how you find contentment in your life. If you answered yes to all of my 4 questions, you have to look for enough from inside of you, not from the external. One difficult emotion that often comes up when you think you don't have enough is envy, and that's lesson 5. Envy is like an iceberg. You see what people have floating above the water, and you want that. But what you don't see is all these sacrifices they made to get there. That's below the water. For example, perhaps the young employee wishes to be like his boss, with money, freedom, and power. But does he know that his boss struggled for 20 years to get to where he is now? The beans and rice he ate for years, the sleepless nights he had to endure, and perhaps even a relationship or marriage in shambles. Like what Ryan says, are you willing to pay the price they paid to get what you covet? Chances are no, you aren't. Most desires are irrational emotions, and that's why stillness requires that we sit down and dissect them. To have an impulse and to resist it, to sit with it and examine it, and to let it pass by like a bad smell. That is how we develop spiritual strength. That's how you deal with all difficult emotions, not just envy, but also different desires, impulses, lust, and more. You resist it, sit with it, examine it, and let it pass by. Basically, use the iceberg method. Now, what is the opposite of envy? That's lesson 6. On Wednesday morning, February 23rd, 1944, Anne Frank climbed up to the attic above the annex where her family had been hiding for 2 long years. Staring at the blue sky, the leafless chestnut tree below, birds swooping and diving in the air, it was almost as if the world wasn't at war, as if Hitler had not already killed so many millions of people. Anne was stuck in a war where she would later be killed at 15 years old. But instead of thinking about this, she focused on finding beauty in nature. As long as I can enjoy this sunshine and this cloudless sky, she said, how can I be sad? But what about you and me? Chances are you and I have a roof over our head, 3 meals on the table daily, and most importantly, we aren't being persecuted in a mass genocide. But instead of being grateful for what I have, I used to be annoyed by the amount of overtime I had to do for no extra pay. And now, sometimes I whine about silly problems like putting in so much effort into a YouTube video and having no one watch it. Whenever I find myself struggling with gratitude, I think about Anne Frank. She wrote in her diary, "Beauty remains even in misfortune. If you just look for it, you'll discover more and more happiness." Lesson 6 is probably the epitome of stillness, where the entire world can be at war, but you remain still. Check out this video that summarizes all of Ryan Holiday's Stoicism books. It's not done yet, but hopefully it will be done soon, and I'll see you in that one.